Merry-conceited Jests of George Peele, gentleman, sometimes a student in Oxford, wherein is showed the course of his life, how he lived, a man very well known in the city of London, and elsewhere. How George gulled a punk, otherwise called a Croshabell. Coming to London, he fell in company with a cockatrice, which pleased his eye so well that George fell a-boarding of her, and proffered her the wine, which my Croshabell willingly accepted. To the tavern they go, where, after a little idle talk, George fell to the question about the thing you wot of. My she-hobby was very dainty, which made George far more eager, and my lecherous animal proffered largely to obtain his purpose. To conclude, nothing she would grant unto except ready coin, which was 40 shillings, not a farthing less. If so he would, next night she would appoint him where he should meet her. George saw how the game went, that she was more for lucre than for love. Thus cunningly he answered her. "Gentlewoman, howsoever you speak, I do not think your heart agrees with your tongue. The money you demand is but to try me, and indeed but a trifle to me. But because it shall not be said I bought that gem of you I prize so highly, I'll give you a token tomorrow that shall be more worth than your demand, if you so please to accept it." "Sir," quoth she, "it contenteth me well, and so, if please you, at this time we'll part, and tomorrow in the evening meet you where you shall appoint." The place was determined, and they kissed and parted. She home, George into St. Thomas Apostle's, to a friend of his, of whom he knew he could take up a petticoat of trust. The first letter of his name begins with G. A petticoat he had of him at the price of 5 shillings, which money is owing till this day. The next night being come, they met at the place appointed, which was a tavern. There they were to sup. That ended, George was to go home with her, to end his yeoman's plea in her common case. But Master Peele had another drift in his mazard, for he did so ply her with wine that in a small time she spun such a thread that she reeled homewards, and George, he was fain to be her supporter. When to her house she came, with nothing so much painting in the inside as her face had on the outside, with much ado her maid had her to bed, who was no sooner laid but she fell fast asleep. Which, when George perceived, he sent the maid for milk and a quart of sack to make a posset, where before her return George made so bold as to take up his own new petticoat, a fair gown of hers, 2 gold kings that lay in the window, and away he went. The gown and the gold kings he made a chaffer of. The petticoat he gave to his honest wife, one of the best deeds he ever did to her. How the Croshabell looked when she awaked and saw this, I was never there to know. Merry-conceited Jests of George Peele was narrated by Sarah Blake, with music by Tom Cowell. It was produced by Sounds Curious for Beyond Shakespeare.